Welcome back to Dano Does Things. This week, we will be painting some simple lavender flowers with gouache paint as a beginner exercise so you can play with the consistency, color mixing, and layering. Let's get started by sketching a quick circle on our paper. I'm using Canson cold pressed watercolor paper, the 300 gram kind. Now the only gouache paints I will be using are zinc white and a primary blue, red, and green. Since gouache paints are usually more expensive than watercolors or acrylics, I'm just starting with a super limited palette. It's more than enough to get you started without having to invest a ton of money right off the start. The background of our painting will be a solid blue color. Since this color can really be anything you want, it's nice to start here so you can instead focus on the consistency of the paint itself. Learning the water to paint ratio for gouache is important. You don't want it to be too thick or too thin. I've heard the consistency you want described as heavy cream, which in my experience is pretty accurate. Since you're painting a larger area with one color, play around with adding a bit more or a bit less water and seeing how it feels on the paper. You want it to glide across while maintaining its opacity. If it feels gummy and sticky, add more water. If it feels thin and isn't covering well, use less water and more paint. If you've never used the medium before, it's important to explore and learn what works best. When you're done your circle, we're going to let it completely dry so we can practice painting opaquely over dry color. The primary green I have is a bit dark for what I'm going for, plus this is a good excuse to practice our color mixing. You can play with the ratio of blue to green to white to get a nice leafy green, which we will use to paint our stems. Again, consistency will be important, but you practice with your circle, so keep that in mind when you mix your water into your new green color. These will be our lavender stems, which you can paint in long, steady strokes. Now, one of the benefits of gouache is the ability to create opaque color. If your paint consistency is correct, you won't be able to see the blue underneath. Once you've painted your stems, add a few little leaves. Now we will add some highlights by adding a bit of white to lighten up our green. This time we are painting wet on wet, so the colors will blend just a little. Gouache doesn't bleed and blend in the same way as watercolors, so it's nice to get a feel for how the colors layer. While you're painting, it's also nice to keep note of how the colors look when they dry and how they differ from when they're wet. I'm also going to add a little highlight to the circle just to emphasize where the light is coming from. Now we are going to paint the lavender itself and really have a chance to flex our color mixing muscle by creating purple. Of course, purple is just blue and red, but you can fiddle with the ratio to make the exact purple you want. Using a small brush and an almost dabbing motion, you can create the little petals along the top of the stems. Once you're happy with your flowers, again we will lighten up the color and add some more highlights on the same side as our stem highlights. And that's it. I hope you had fun doing this simple project to kick off your journey with gouache. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.